All right, so we've got the C-ring in place. I'm going to go ahead and add the headset cap. I like that this has the notches in here to interface into the C-ring so that it moves together. And we'll go ahead and add our spacers. I've already measured the stack height relative to the bottom bracket. Okay, so just like that, we've got our handlebar in place. I've already drawn a line here to mark where exactly I should cut the fork. I set the stem. This is an old stem that I used as a marker. So I'll go ahead and cut right here. And I'm actually going to use a 5mm spacer on top of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut directly on the line that I drew up. All right, safety first, gloves, eyeglasses for the carbon fiber, and a mask for the carbon fibers. I'll go ahead and sand down after, but we've got our hacksaw, and we're gonna go ahead and cut this. Okay, so we've gone ahead and cut the steer tube. So let's go ahead and see. I did sand it down, so we're gonna go ahead and remove this old stem that's used as a cutting guide. All right, not too bad. It's not the best cut, but it'll do. I'll go ahead and clean this up a bit, add some super glue just to seal it off from water seeping into the fibers, and then we'll be good to assemble it. So we're gonna just add a bit along this face, just enough to create a bit of a seal. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it later. Just go ahead and gently wipe it on the inside on this face. And there you have it, folks. We'll let that dry off and we'll go ahead and assemble it. Now the question is, do I want the rear brake cable housing to go under the bottom bracket or over? I think if I go under, it will be very tight in there, as you can see. There's not too much clearance here, probably just enough for a cable housing. But if I go over, there should be more room. But the only thing is the cable will snake up and then back down. I think I'm gonna try to go over because there's more room above the bottom bracket. So for those of you that are trying to do rear mechanical, then you probably would have to go under. But then since I'm only doing just the brake cable housing on the rear and the front derailleur, I'm using electronic wireless, so I don't need this, which you probably would go under. So I think for the brake housing, I'm actually gonna go over the bottom bracket, dip down, and then come back up. Okay, so this was pretty difficult, but I got it through the top portion, so we gotta route it up this hole and up the down tube. So I'm gonna pull this out and then try to reroute it up here. Okay, so one benefit I would say about this storage box that I haven't heard of is cable routing management is so much easier. As you can see, I've got my cable router tool here and I'm just able to easily route it. So I have so much access to the down tube, so cable management becomes that much easier. Let's keep routing this all the way up the down tube to the head tube and out. And just like that, the cable routing tool is in the head tube, so I'll go ahead and grab that. And now we are good to go, and we have routed the cable all the way from the rear brake housing outlet to here. So for this build, I'm using the Jaguar Road Pro brake cable kit. This is the compressionless brake housing, and it's got lube, Pro Slick, etc. So this will be the one to use. I've heard that compressionless is the way to go if you're running mechanical cable. I actually got this for $30 Canadian, which is a massive steal. So I found this on Kijiji. So this is what it comes with, the actual brake cable, as well as the cable outers, the cable housing. And you could see, I don't know if you can see this, but this is the KEB-SL version of the Jaguar cable. Okay, so now this is where this comes in handy. These are the different heads for the cable housings. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one right here, which should be for the brake cable housing. And then we'll attach the brake cable housing onto this thing right here. Tighten it just enough that it grabs on like that. And I guess we gotta reinstall this one. Okay, that should be good enough. So now we're gonna go ahead and pull this through from the head tube side. So as you can see, I'm pulling from the head tube side, and let's hope this fits. Nice. And as you can see, we see it popping up in here. So we'll go ahead and continue pulling from the top tube area while pushing from the rear end. And just like that, we've already routed the brake cable housing through the whole frame exactly where we need it to be. This cable routing tool is definitely a must-have. You can watch my video here. And just like that, we're done routing the cable through the frame, because that's the only one that we're using, because we've got front and rear derailleur, which are electronic shifting. So I'm going to go ahead and install this cable outers. These are foam cable housing outers just to dampen some of the sounds and rattling. So we'll go ahead and install that in the down tube and also near the bottom bracket area. And once again, I love having this open compartment. I feel like every bike and road bike should have this. It just makes building the bike that much easier. Okay, so this is the rear derailleur. Add some grease on the attachment screw. Go ahead and install this. Okay, so we're going to feed the cable housing through the fork, and let's hope for the best. Yes, it's a direct access from here to here, so this is a big plus for TanTan. Once again, reusing my brake, the Oniri BR05. We'll go ahead and install this on the fork. It's better to install this front one first and then install the rear one thereafter. So we'll leave that slightly loose in case we need to adjust it later. Okay, so I'm gonna apply a liberal amount of grease on the inside of this bearing, and we'll go ahead and feed it through the fork like so. So we've got our bearing in place. Maybe I'll just add a bit more on this internal surface. Okay, we've got our grease, and we can now feed this through the head tube. Okay, adding more grease on the inner bearing surface. Okay, so we brought this down just so that it's a bit easier to work with now that it's down on the ground. So we'll feed this also through the head tube, and there we have our cable, rear brake, and just like that, feed this to the front side, and just like that, we've got both cables. Okay, we'll go ahead and add a liberal amount of grease on the inside of the bearing as well. Probably could use a bit more, But regardless, this is the C-ring. Add some grease on the inner surface of the top of the head tube as well. Not gonna lie, I should have done this first. Just like that. So we're gonna feed the cables through this piece right here, which goes up on like so. So that's looking pretty good. My spacers, and then my handlebar. It's a perfect fit. The expander plug. Once again, I got an extra long one. I believe this one's 80 millimeters, just so that I'm covered throughout the whole stem portion. In case anything ever happens, then at least this expander plug is still in there. So that is one thing I would recommend. Okay, we'll go ahead and tighten this up. Tighten the expander plug because we need it to expand in here. I've got this set to 8 Newton meters. So we'll see what happens. Here, go up to 10. The last 5 millimeter spacer goes on top of here, and there's a bit of gap here for the top cap. So we'll put this top cap on top of here to give a bit of compression so that we can go ahead and tighten up the stem. This one I'd say just about finger tight, just to get enough compression in the steer tube assembly. Now that I think about this, I probably should have sanded this down a bit. It does seem like it's a bit of a sharp edge. Okay, and I'll go ahead and tighten this about 5 Newton meters for the stem. Okay, so it's my first time using compressionless brake cable housing. So I'll insert this in here and we'll basically cut the cable housing right around here or so.